She stood at the doorway one last time, feeling the weight of 15 years pressing against her spine. The house that had caged her spirit sat silent behind her, holding its breath, waiting for her to turn around to doubt to break. But her hands gripped the suitcase handle like it was the edge of freedom itself. The morning sun painted gold across her face, warming skin that had known too many cold nights. Every cell in her body screamed to look back, but she had made a promise to herself. She walked away without looking back. The gravel crunched beneath her feet each step, a declaration of independence that echoed through the quiet suburban street. Sarah Martinez had spent decades building a life that looked perfect from the outside. The white picket fence, the 2-story colonial, the well-manicured lawn that her husband Marcus insisted be mowed in diagonal patterns every Saturday morning. She had played the role of dutiful wife so convincingly that she almost forgot she was acting. Almost. But there were moments late at night when Marcus snored beside her that she remembered who she used to be before she became Mrs. Martinez, before she learned to make herself smaller to accommodate his ever-expanding ego. The bus stop was 3 blocks away, and Sarah counted each one like a prisoner marking days until release. Block 1. The house where the Hendersons lived, where Marcus had loudly corrected her pronunciation of quinoa at their dinner party, making her feel stupid in front of neighbors she barely knew. Block 2. The corner where he had grabbed her arm so hard it left fingerprint bruises because she had forgotten to pick up his dry cleaning. Block 3. Freedom. The bench was empty, and she sat down feeling the weight of her decisions settle into her bones. There was no going back now. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Marcus. She did not need to look at the screen to know he had discovered the note she left on the kitchen counter. 5 words written in her careful handwriting. I deserve more than this. The messages came flooding in. 37 in the first 10 minutes. She watched the number climb on her locked screen, not reading a single one. He would be angry first, then confused, then manipulative with promises of change and accusations of selfishness. She had seen this pattern before during her previous attempts to leave. 3 times over the years, she had packed bags only to unpack them after he cried and swore things would be different. But different lasted about as long as his promises, usually 2 weeks before he reverted to the man who needed to control every aspect of her existence, from what she wore to who she spoke to at the grocery store. The bus arrived, and Sarah climbed aboard, handing the driver exact change. She had been planning this escape for 8 months, collecting cash from grocery shopping, returning items, without telling Marcus, hiding 20s in her underwear drawer. $4,367. Enough to start over in the city where her college roommate Diane lived. Diane, who had never liked Marcus, who had seen through his charm offensive from day one, who had kept her door open all these years, waiting for Sarah to be ready. The bus pulled away, and Sarah pressed her forehead against the cool window, watching her neighborhood disappear block by block, house by house, until it was all just a blur of sameness. She thought about the woman she had been at 23, when she met Marcus at a corporate training seminar. She had been confident, then ambitious, with plans to get her MBA and start her own consulting firm. He had been charming, sweeping her into a whirlwind romance that felt like something out of a movie. He brought her flowers every Friday, took her to expensive restaurants, told her she was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. The red flags were there even then, but she had been too intoxicated by the attention to notice. The way he discouraged her from going out with friends because he wanted her all to himself. The way he made decisions for them both because he knew what was best. The way he slowly convinced her that graduate school was a waste of money when she could just marry him and they would build a life together. By the time she realized she was in a cage, the door had already locked behind her. The isolation happened so gradually she barely noticed. First, it was skipping girls' nights because Marcus preferred she stay home. Then it was losing touch with college friends because he made snide comments about them being bad influences. Eventually, it was quitting her job because he earned enough for both of them, and would not it be nice if she focused on making their house a home? The house became her entire world, and Marcus controlled every corner of it. He decided what they ate for dinner. He chose the color of the living room walls. He monitored her phone calls and emails, claiming he was just being protective. He criticized her weight, her cooking, her intelligence, her family, her opinions. Slowly, methodically, he dismantled her sense of self until she did not recognize the woman staring back at her in the mirror. The bus rumbled through 3 towns before reaching the city. Sarah watched the landscape change from manicured suburbs to industrial zones to the urban sprawl she remembered from her 20s. The city had an energy that made her feel alive in a way she had almost forgotten was possible. People rushed past on sidewalks, each with their own destination, their own purpose, their own lives that did not revolve around someone else, moods and demands. She got off at the main terminal and called Diane from a payphone using quarters because Marcus tracked her cell phone location. Diane answered on the second ring, and Sarah heard her friend voice crack with emotion when she said, "I am here." I actually did it this time. 20 minutes later, Diane pulled up in her beat-up Honda, and Sarah climbed in, feeling tears stream down her face for the first time all day. They did not speak during the drive to Diane's apartment. Words were not necessary. Diane reached over and squeezed Sarah's hand, and that simple gesture of solidarity said everything. The apartment was small, but it felt enormous compared to the prison of her marriage. Diane had set up the spare bedroom with fresh sheets and a vase of sunflowers on the nightstand. Sarah sat on the bed and let herself cry for real this time. She cried for the years she had lost. She cried for the dreams she had abandoned. She cried for the version of herself that had believed she deserved the treatment Marcus gave her. But somewhere in the midst of the tears, she felt something else rising up. Relief, pride, hope. That first night, she slept better than she had in years. No Marcus breathing beside her ready to wake her up if she moved too much. No walking on eggshells wondering what mood he would be in the next morning. Just silence and safety, and the knowledge that she had chosen herself for the first time in 15 years. When she woke up the next morning, sunlight streamed through unfamiliar windows, and for a moment, she panicked, thinking she needed to get up and make Marcus his coffee exactly the way he liked it. Then she remembered. She was free. The next weeks were a blur of logistics. Diane helped her open a new bank account in her maiden name. They went to the police station where Sarah filed a restraining order after Marcus showed up at Diane Building screaming her name in the parking lot. She enrolled in a support group for survivors of domestic abuse and heard her own story reflected back at her in the voices of other women who had also walked away. Each meeting made her stronger, made her realize that what she had endured was not normal, was not her fault, was not something she had to accept. She got a job at a small marketing firm. The pay was not great, but it was hers. Money she earned that went into an account Marcus could not touch. Her boss was a woman named Patricia, who had also left an abusive marriage 10 years earlier. Patricia took Sarah under her wing, teaching her not just about marketing, but about rebuilding a life from scratch, about trusting herself again, about recognizing her own worth. 3 months after leaving, Sarah sat in a coffee shop on a Saturday morning reading a book just because she wanted to, not because Marcus had approved it, not because it was on some list he had made of acceptable literature, just because the cover looked interesting and she wanted to know what happened in the story. A man at the next table smiled at her, and she smiled back not with fear or calculation, but with simple human kindness. She was not ready for dating, might never be ready, and that was okay. But she was ready to be a person again, instead of a possession. 6 months after leaving, she enrolled in an online MBA program. The same dream she had deferred 15 years ago was still waiting for her, patient and persistent. She studied late into the night, making up for lost time, feeling her brain wake up after years of being told her opinions did not matter. Her ideas were not valuable. Her ambitions were silly. Every completed assignment was an act of reclamation. Marcus continued to try to contact her, finding new phone numbers, sending letters to her workplace, showing up at places he thought she might be. But each attempt had less power over her. She had learned to recognize his manipulation tactics the way a scientist identifies patterns in data. The love bombing followed by threats. The promises followed by blame. The cycle that had kept her trapped for so long no longer worked because she had stepped outside of it. 1 year after leaving, Sarah stood in front of a mirror getting ready for her first day at a new job. She had been promoted to senior marketing consultant at a larger firm. The woman looking back at her was different from the one who had walked away that morning. Her eyes were brighter. Her shoulders were back. Her smile was genuine, not the practiced expression she had worn like armor in her marriage. She thought about Marcus and felt nothing but pity for a man so insecure he needed to destroy another person to feel powerful. The apartment she shared with Diane had become a sanctuary. They cooked dinner together most nights, swapping stories about their days, laughing at inside jokes, decorating with thrift store finds that made the place feel like home. Sarah had learned that home was not a building or a mortgage or a perfectly maintained lawn. Home was safety. Home was authenticity. Home was being able to breathe without permission. She started volunteering at a women's shelter on weekends. She sat with women who were where she had been a year ago, scared and uncertain, and convinced they had no options. She held their hands and told them her story, and watched hope kindle in their eyes. She gave them the phone numbers for resources and safe houses. She reminded them that leaving was possible, that they deserved better, that their abuser words about them were lies designed to maintain control. Each woman she helped was a small victory against the men who thought they could own and destroy women without consequence. 2 years after leaving, Sarah graduated with her MBA. Diane threw her a party, inviting the friends Sarah had reconnected with over the past months. Women from college she had not spoken to in over a decade, who welcomed her back with open arms and zero judgment. New friends from work and school, who knew her as the competent, driven woman she had become, not the shell Marcus had tried to reduce her to. Patricia gave a toast about resilience and second chances, and everyone raised their glasses to Sarah Future. That night, after everyone left, Sarah sat on the balcony of the new apartment she had just moved into. Her own place. 1 bedroom with a tiny kitchen and a view of the city lights. It was not much, but it was hers, and hers alone. She thought about the morning she had walked away, how terrified she had been, how certain she was that she would fail without Marcus providing for her, protecting her, making decisions for her. All lies he had planted in her mind like poison seeds. She had not failed. She had flourished. She had remembered who she was and built something even better than what she had lost. 3 years after leaving, Sarah started her own consulting firm. It was small, just her and 2 part-time contractors working out of a co-working space, but it was everything she had dreamed of at 23, before Marcus convinced her to abandon her ambitions. Her first client was a women-owned startup, and Sarah felt the poetry of that deeply. She was helping other women build their dreams while living her own. The business grew slowly but steadily. She worked long hours, but they were her hours spent building something she believed in, not serving someone else's ego. She hired her first full-time employee, a young woman fresh out of college who reminded Sarah of herself before she had learned to doubt her capabilities. She mentored this woman the way Patricia had mentored her, passing forward the gift of belief that had saved her life. Marcus tried one last time to insert himself back into her world. He showed up at her office building claiming he had changed, that he had been in therapy, that he finally understood what he had done wrong. Sarah listened to his rehearsed speech from behind her desk, flanked by the framed MBA diploma on the wall and photos of her with Diane and her other friends. When he finished talking, she looked him in the eye and said 3 words: I am done. Not angry or emotional, just matter of fact. She was done letting him take up space in her head, done wondering if she had made the right choice, done carrying any guilt or responsibility for the failure of their marriage. She was simply done, and the finality of it must have registered because he left and never came back. 5 years after leaving, Sarah stood on a stage accepting an award for emerging women entrepreneurs. She looked out at the audience and saw Diane in the front row crying happy tears. She saw Patricia beaming with pride. She saw the women from her support group who had become dear friends. She saw the employees of her now thriving firm. She gave her acceptance speech, and when she got to the part about overcoming obstacles, she did not mention Marcus by name, but she talked about the courage it takes to walk away from a life that looks perfect but feels like death. She talked about the women who had helped her rebuild. She talked about the importance of believing survivors and creating pathways for women to achieve economic independence. When she finished, the standing ovation lasted for 3 full minutes. That night, Sarah returned to her apartment, now a spacious 2-bedroom in a building with a doorman. She had come so far from that morning on the bus with $4,000 and a suitcase full of fear. She poured herself a glass of wine and stepped onto her balcony, looking out at the city that had given her a second chance at life. She thought about the scared woman who had sat at the bus stop wondering if she was making a terrible mistake. She wished she could go back and tell that woman what she knew now, that every step away from Marcus was a step toward herself, that the fear would fade and strength would take its place, that she was not alone and never would be again. That walking away without looking back was not running away. It was running toward everything she was meant to become. Sarah raised her glass to the city lights, to the women who had walked this path before her, to the women who would walk it after, to Diane and Patricia, and every person who had believed in her when she could not believe in herself. And most importantly, she raised her glass to the woman in the mirror, the one who had found the courage to choose herself. The one who had learned that love should never cost you your dignity, your dreams, or your sense of self. The one who had discovered that the bravest thing she ever did was walk away without looking back.